Witamy na edycji 2020 roku festiwalu Big Book. Big Book Festival po raz kolejny gości największe literackie sławy nie tylko z Polski, ale także spoza naszego kraju. Dziś będzie z nami szczególny gość, Simon Stranger, pisarz norweski, autor książek dla młodzieży do tej pory, przede wszystkim dla młodzieży, ale właśnie na polskim rynku ukazuje się jego książka, powieść, Lexicon światła i mroku. Dlaczego ta książka jest z wielu powodów niezwykła, powiemy podczas spotkania z Simonem, z którym powinniśmy usłyszeć się za moment. Simonie, czy się słyszymy? Can we hear you, Simon?
Yes, I can hear you. I hear you loud and clear.
So, Simon, hi, welcome to Warsaw via internet connection. Thanks to internet, you can be with us and we can be with you.
Yes.
So first thing first, I need to ask you about the pronunciation of your name. Is it Simon Strange or is it Simon Stranger? Because it
in Norwegian, it's Simon Stranger, as you pronounce it. But when I talk to people in the US or in English, I often say stranger just because it's easier. But
yeah.
Yeah,
but it's makes you hard to forget. So, but it's just first reason why. The second reason and the most obvious one is your work. So the English title for Lexicon światła i mroku, that's the Polish title of your book, is Keep Saying Their Names. So it's a bit different, but I need to ask you first of all about the books behind you. Oh yeah.
So it's the same title. In Norwegian, it's the same title as the Polish one.
So could you read it out loud for us, please? I mean the
title.
Yes.
Yeah, it's Lexicon om lys og mørke.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's maybe a bit difficult to repeat in Polish, or in Norwegian, but yeah.
It's the same title. Yeah.
Can you tell us something about the books that we see behind you? Because you have a huge library, I can see.
Yeah, this is my home. So this is my home office. This is where I'm sitting now. Is where I sit and write my books. Mm-hmm. So these are the shelves that I put all the books that I read or have read.
Okay. How many of those are historical books?
Oh, I don't know. They're mostly novels from all over the world. Yeah.
Yeah. So your new book, Keep Saying Their Names, Lexicon światła i mroku, is also a novel, and it's the idea behind it is very peculiar, and makes it hard to forget, and makes it very interesting to read. So it's basically lexicon or an alphabet. So that alphabet helps us. Or helps or not helps, that's the question, to arrange the memories, the facts, the impressions, the emotions. Why alphabet? What made you choose that strategy?
I think the main reason is that I think that the way we remember and the way we think and the way our brain works, it's not like a line. It's through associations. So in our thoughts, we can wander seamlessly between different parts of our history. So I wanted to give the novel the same, or to give the reader this feeling of entering a space where time and space just is gone, and you can move from concrete to consciousness, from babies to blood. In just 2 paragraphs.
Yeah.
And I guess the last reason is to take a point on language itself. Like in one of the sections, in Norwegian or in English, it would be something like W for words, for the words we use to describe reality, and the word that also creates our reality. So I think behind every genocide starts with words. It starts with how we look upon the with the world, and how we make a distinction between us and them, and that is always the beginning of genocides. So
yeah, dehumanizing
emphasizing
people.
the language. Yeah,
Dehumanizing people, right?
yeah,
What it also does, this alphabet and the way you construct that story is, you know, alphabet has its own objectivity to it, right? It has its own hierarchy, and it's that was something I noticed. Would you agree to that?
yes, absolutely. And it gives us sort of like it's an encyclopedia, but a very personal encyclopedia, of course. And it also gives the reader the sense that you actually don't know what's going to come on the next page, but you know that you're gonna be walked through this story with these characters. Yeah.
And in Indian culture, they have this time goes in circles. So it's the same here, right? So we can have. We travel through time. I just saw Christopher Nolan's movie yesterday, where we travel through time. Tenet, yeah, and that same kind of thing would happen in your book, I guess, sometimes.
Yes, it's time travel in the sense that we time travel in our thoughts. Like if you have a conversation with somebody and they say something, it makes you maybe it reminds you of your childhood or a place you've been. So then you can be in Poland talking to someone, and at the same time you're in a different city, or you're in your childhood's house, or this is the way the novel is structured.
And at what point of your work, at which stage did you make that decision to arrange that in an alphabet?
That was after a year. So I started working up the novel based on the house, and maybe I should say a little bit about the house and the
of course, yes. Just introduction. Yeah.
The introduction, yeah. So maybe you can see the house here on the Norwegian cover. So it was 5 or 6 years ago. I was with my mother-in-law, and I live in Oslo in Norway. And I have 2 kids. And it was this quiet Saturday or Sunday with jazz in the living room. And then my mother-in-law's third and hopefully last husband came and said, did you know that Greta grew up in this house where the Norwegian Nazi Renown lived?
Henry Renown, yes.
Henry Renown, which is one of Norwegian history's most notorious criminals. So he was a secret agent.
Collaborator or so, yeah.
Yes. So he was Norwegian, but he worked for the Nazis. So his job was to infiltrate the Norwegian resistance and have people arrested and tortured. And he used this house as his headquarters. And in this house, my mother-in-law grew up just after the war, which is very strange, because it would be strange for any family, but my mother-in-law is from a Jewish family, and some parts of her family was killed. So when I first heard this story, I knew this. I have to write a novel about this. So I started writing about the rooms in the house, but I had a short section in the middle that was like a letter to the great grandfather of my kids. He was Jewish and killed, and I made it alphabetical, and that was the kind of energy that I needed for the rest of the novel. So I just changed it.
Yeah, but then I asked you before about that decision you made to arrange that in an alphabetical order. So it was after, you said, a year of work already?
Yeah. So the first year I was sketching and writing and reading and traveling and trying to figure out who was this Renown character and how did he become what he became. And But it was just when I found this alphabetical structure that everything is suddenly opened, which I think happens for a lot of writers, that you have to find the key, you have to find the door into the novel. And once you do, it's like everything just falls in place, which is one of the fantastic moments you can have as a writer. And then, of course, a lot of work to get it finished. But yeah,
it can also start with a brick, a golden brick on the ground, on the pavement, right next to certain house or certain former shop or whatever kind of place. So there is this German artist, Günther Demnig, who puts those golden bricks on the pavements in many cities across Europe to commemorate the Jewish people that are gone, that were gone, that perished during the Holocaust. So one of those was devoted to Hirsch Kommissar, right?
Yeah, yes. Which is the great-grandfather of my kids, Hirsch Kommissar, who lived in a Norwegian city called Trondheim, which is one of the biggest cities in Norway. And I think it's a beautiful artwork that he does. He puts this, as you said, these cobblestones, and he calls them stolpersteine, so stumbling stones.
Yeah. Stumbling stones, yeah, because it's in order to stumble on them.
Yes, not physically.
Only,
not physically, but mentally and emotionally, you're supposed to stumble. So just in the pavement outside of houses where Jewish families that were killed used to live, it's just a small plate saying, "Here lived Hirsch Kommissar, born." His date, killed the 7th of October, 1942. So just very short. Mm-hmm. And the reason behind this is that in the Jewish tradition, you say that people die twice. The first time is when your heart stops beating and your brain shuts down like a city during a blackout. But the second time is when your name is thought of or uttered or seen for the last time, which can be 50 or 100 or 400 years later. And that's only when your name is thought of for the last time, only then are you really dead and erased from life on earth.
And for that reason, the English title of your book is "Keep Saying Their Names."
Yes, which is one of the last sentences in the novel. So I think it's a beautiful artwork from Günther Demnig, and it's now more than 70,000 cobblestones all over Europe.
Yeah.
And I think, do you have them in Warsaw as well, I guess?
I haven't seen any of those in Warsaw so far, but I have, I guess, in Krakow. I guess I've seen them. I saw one in Prague. I've seen many in Berlin as well, and in German cities, of course, where they all originated. But then there is a question asked by your son, right?
Yes.
Why is our grandfather's name on that stone, Dad? What happened?
Yes.
And then you start researching. You need to answer that question. That's fascinating.
Yes.
That's very touching also.
Yes, thank you. And all of those stories in the novel are real. So when I first heard about this book, we decided to go to Trondheim. And my mother-in-law used to live there for a while. So we went visiting them, and we went to see this stumbling stone. And my son, he was perhaps 8 or 9 years old at the time, and he pushed all the rubbish away from the stone, and he read the word "killed," and he said, "Dad, why was he killed?" And I said, to me, it was quite obvious. So I said, because he was Jewish. And my son's response was, "Yeah, but why?"
How old was he at the time? I mean, your son, when he asked that question?
He was 8 or 9 years. So I had to describe the Holocaust and the Nazis and how they wanted to get rid of all the Jews in the world. And then he looked at me with his brown eyes and said, "Are we also Jewish, Dad?" I was like a really horrible question because behind the question lies, are we also in danger? Could somebody come and arrest us and kill us only because of our blood? So yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's made the big question in your book also. One of the big questions of your book, that one. Like I said, and like we said before, we have a cycle of time or circle of time, right? So hopefully it's not happening again. Do you think that that story is, in a way, representative to this bigger Norwegian history of the Second World War? I mean, because what you do in the book, you portray both Henry Renown and Hirsch Kommissar. You have like a dual, two stories or two sides of one coin, basically. But is this like a history of Norway in a nutshell?
Yes, absolutely. I think that was what fascinated me so much with this house, because it's like you said, it's almost like the Second World War in a nutshell, or in a house. Like Renown representing the Nazis, and Hirschkommissar representing the people that were killed, but also this family moving into the house after the war, and how and playing and eating and sleeping in the same rooms that were torture chambers just a couple of years earlier, and the shadows that the war still cast upon them, and still the shadows that are still there today. So, yes.
It's also about making this decision to, go live in that house, to either move on, to forget or not to forget about what had happened in that place. It's a big debate. Do you think that Norway, your country, really went through it? That they really like had that debate about their past?
No, actually, I don't think so. I think fascism is very much still alive in Europe, and I would really hope that this was only an historical novel about a chapter in our common history that was now history, but it's not. It was only in 2011 was a Norwegian terrorist that killed 77 people in Norway. 69 of them were just young politicians, or at a camp for young politicians. And you see those kind of, like today, as neo-Nazis in Berlin waving the flags of the old flag of Germany. So I think fascism is still alive, and it's something we have to remember, and something we have to deal with in ourselves and in our culture over and over again.
Because history, I would say, is this safe word to basically distance ourselves or separate ourselves from what's really bad or what was bad, and to say, oh, now it's now, and that was history, that was in the past, and it's not happening again. And I'm laughing.
Yes, we have to. We have to laugh or cry, I think. But so I think it's also a very important book politically, or an important topic to discuss in many European countries. I think, and I hope that on the grand scale, human rights are coming to more and more countries. So the world is becoming a safer place for people all over the world. That's like the last couple of 100 years. But there are several throwbacks. And I don't know the situation in Poland. You have some right-wing extremists and Muslim hate. I just read on the internet. and with the election you had now in July, right?
Yes, yes.
Yes.
It was not so much anti-Muslim, maybe like generally anti-refugees, and maybe last elections more than those that we just had. But in those, we had more like a state-orchestrated campaign against the LGBTQ plus people, rather than immigrants or Muslim people. So that's our things to deal with.
In Norway, there was this demonstration yesterday, a right-wing demonstration, Stop Islamization of Norway. It's quite a tiny group of people, but they get a lot of attention by media, and of course, a lot of angry demonstrants that want to demonstrate against them, and they clash together, and the police has to come. So it was like not a war zone, but tear gas and uniformed police in the center of Oslo yesterday. So I think this is escalated in the couple of last weeks. So we have to find a way to deal with right-wing extremists and fascists, and to not to feed the troll, but to make it break.
Oh, yeah. And what's the Norwegians' approach to their past in general? How would you define it? How would you say?
I think the Norwegian approach has been to talk about the heroes of the war, those that were on the right side of the war, that were anti-Nazi. But now only the last 10 years, perhaps, the stories of all those families that were voting for the Nazis and that were pro-Nazi, which was a lot of people. So now I'm starting to go to dinner parties where people say that, okay, I just learned that my grandfather was working for the Nazis, and so forth. So, but it's taken 60 years for those stories to gradually come to the surface.
Yeah, yeah. So
because I think it's so shameful for people, and now after the war, and especially 70 years after the war, it's so easy to say who was on the right side. But it was not only in Hitler's Germany that fascism was alive, and these thoughts. It was all over the West and in Norway as well. So I think we're starting to deal with it just now as a
and
nation.
did your book? Do you have a feeling that your book contributed to or started a debate when it was released? It was released 2 years ago, right? So did it start a debate, or when you?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it came out as a part of a debate with another book by another writer, which was called "What Did the Norwegian Resistance Know?" So what did the Norwegian resistance know about the Holocaust, and how much could they have warned Jews in Norway? So that was a big really like blew up in like a scandal in Norway. But this novel is it won the Norwegian Booksellers Prize, so it's like amazingly a lot of people have read it, which is very which is of course fantastic for me as a writer. So it's been part of a remembrance for a lot of families, and I get all these letters and phone calls and like on Messenger from people who say things from their childhood or maybe from their grandparents' life. So it's been awakening and perhaps healing for a lot of families, and also to see that this was a Norwegian. This was not a German. This was a Norwegian who was in charge of this horrible gang.
I'm going to interrupt for a second to say to the audience that they can also ask questions if they want. Proszę Państwa, można także oczywiście zadawać pytania, jeśli mają Państwo jakieś
Ladies and
pytania
gentlemen, you can ask
do
questions
Simona.
whenever you have any.
You can, korzystając z tej przerwy.
Simon, meanwhile, actually enjoys his tea.
Simon, what's also very beautiful about the book is that you were able to go through generations of people that led to well, to basically your son, because you look at your son and you see in his eyes, you see generations of, there is a moment in the book where you like, his eyes are a sort of a consequence of the existence of generations of people, among whom was also Hirsch Kommissar. So if we stick to the English title, keep saying their names, keep telling their stories also, I would say. Can you tell us something more about who Hirsch Kommissar was and when his family came to Norway? How did that happen?
Absolutely. So my wife's family, their name is Kommissar, which is a kind of a strange name. So my kid's name is Stranger Kommissar, which is quite funny, I think. Anyway, so they fled from Russia at the last part of the 18th century.
When the pogroms started.
When the pogrom started, yeah. Exactly. So like a lot of, but in Norway, Jews were banned. Jews were not allowed to come into Norway until 1850, I think. So the last part of 18th century. And Hirsch Kommissar, he married another Jew from a different part. And they started this clothing shop in Trondheim. So they were selling like clothes and hats and gloves, and it was a really beautiful small shop. And they had 3 kids and just lived a normal life until the war came. And sadly, they fled to Germany. No, sorry, to Sweden when the war broke out, and stayed there for a while, and then they moved back to Norway because there they had the job and apartment and everything. He was a guy that he knew a lot of languages. He studied in Germany, he studied in England, so I think he spoke 5 languages fluently. And the portraits of him and his wife are like intellectuals, and yeah.
So the society, well, or Nazis, but then the society also decided to get rid of them just because they were Jewish. It's so hard to understand, really, to get rid of the elite because they were elite.
It is really, it is really hard to understand. And you know, this cobblestones that we talked about. It struck me in a conversation with my publisher once that there are now about 70,000 cobblestones that are in Europe. And suddenly I realized how many cobblestones are left. If this art piece was ever to be fulfilled, it would be almost 6 million cobblestones. Like in some cities in Europe,
golden
it would
streets.
Just be metal.
Yeah.
It would be just golden streets. It would just be brass everywhere with these names. So it is a really what do you say, a void, like a really dark black void in our quite close history. This is only 75 years ago. So yeah, we need to keep remembering their names, because I think those who don't learn from history are bound to repeat it.
Oh, yeah.
So
that's when this melancholy sneaks in, like in Freud's theory, right? That when you don't go through your memories or you don't memorize those who were lost, then the melancholy sneaks in, and some empty space. You don't know what's there, but you just know that something's missing. So that's what probably happened to our culture. And
absolutely, and with the Renown, I think it's also trying to describe what is it, what makes a small a boy from Trondheim, he's quiet and polite and shy. What makes him one of Norwegian history's most notorious criminals, and a guy that kills a lot of people. And at the end of the war, in this house, in the basement, he has three people killed and then chopped. One of them is his former mistress. Why does he become what he becomes? And I think that is the story of people that feel that they fall out. People, especially young men, that feel that they fall out of society. And then this feeling of exclusion turns into anger. It's like, I'm better than them, I'm more than them, I'm going to show them. This kind of feelings that are, unfortunately, that are very visible, I guess, among school shooters and some terrorists in different countries.
ISIS also is made of those people.
Yeah.
It's full of those people.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And also, the Renown was also feeling insecure, and then
Yes.
he was handpicked by the Nazis. He felt validated. Finally, wow! There's someone's noticing me.
Finally, so he was driving a car around in this area for 10 years before the war, because he was working with selling stuff. And then in this dinner with a Nazi officer, the Nazi officer says, "Okay, so you know people around here?" "Yes, of course. I know every farm. I know every small place. I know which families who are on your side and who are not." And the officer says, "Okay, this is very interesting. Maybe you want to work for us." And then he gets this uniform, he gets a salary, he gets attention, and he decides he's going to be the best Nazi agent they could ever find. And he's very successful at that.
And Simon, it is a novel. You stipulate at the end of the book it's a novel. Yet the reader, and I have a right to say that because I was a reader, of course. So a reader has me has the impression that it's like a super non-fiction book, which is it's something in between. How would you define that book with your own words?
It's like I would define it as a documentary novel, because I think it's really important to me that all the parts with Renown, they are as real and realistic and correct as I could have them. So I spent a lot of time researching and traveling to the places and reading biographies and court documents. So every scene with Renown is based on biographies or documents, actually. But of course, his thoughts and feelings, it's not like I have a Renown machine in my basement, so that is, I have to imagine what does it feel like to be in that situation. But all those parts are non-fiction, actually. And with my wife's family, there are not so much written, of course. So I've had to base their lives more on the tales of their children.
Yeah, so it's like a oral history, or more oral history than archives and documents.
Yeah,
and
but I think that is what a novel can do, right? It can go into other people's heads and start writing about feelings and thoughts for this person, and so it's not a question of if it's real or not, but how realistic and how good an impression this could be. Yeah. So I'm very glad that it seems that it worked for you as a reader.
Yeah, it did, definitely. And I'm wondering, it must be very difficult to go through the mind of such an evil person. I mean, Henry Renown. Was it?
Yes, it's been quite a dark novel to write. although I've tried to make it as beautiful as possible within the realms of what is happening. But of course, going into his thoughts and his anger, so there's some violent scenes in that novel. Yeah. So it's been. I think I've included a scene where I'm researching for the book at my home office where I sit now, and then so I have this horrible pictures of people that were killed and tortured in the house, and then my daughter comes and says, "What's that, Dad?" And I try to close the windows on the and then go from torture scenes to making dinner.
Yeah. You had to separate yourself. And how did that work influence you as a person and as a writer? Your previous literary works were well dedicated to younger audiences mostly. It was young adult novels, for example. So then you started working on this one, and did that change you?
No, actually not. It's changed me in the sense that this is my fifth novel for adults, but it's the first one that has been translated to other languages.
22 languages. Congratulations.
Thank you so much. And the movie rights are sold, and so it's put me in a very different situation than that what I've been used to for. I've been a writer for 20 years, so now I can only write. I can live just from my writing, which is wonderful. But in the terms of changing me in how I write, I think this novel is just because I thought it was kind of a strange novel with this lexicon form, but I think the success has shown that I just have to believe in the way that I view the novel and just write the things that I really want to write. And maybe I think there's a Nobel Literature Prize winner who said that for a writer, it's like the reason you write it is you take a part of reality and you hold it up for the reader and you say, this is how I see the world. Do you see it the same way? So I'll try to continue with that.
And I'm also wondering, did it take a lot of email communications with the translators from across the world? Because to arrange that in that same kind of alphabetical order might be quite difficult. So in Poland, we have a version translated by Katarzyna Tunkiel and beautifully translated. So I'm wondering how it's how do you look at this? I mean, at that process of working with the translators.
How many letters do you have in Polish?
Well, difficult question. How many?
29, or do you have?
We cannot answer now. Maybe we'll try.
Oh, great.
But anyways,
because in Norwegian, I'll try to show you. In Norwegian, we have some special characters, but I don't think you have them in Poland.
Okay.
This one?
Yes.
This one. And this is the last letter of our alphabet. So as you say, it's been a process with every translator in every country. I've had to email with them. And I tried to make this recipe for the translators because, of course, the words have to be put in other places. And every language is different, and every alphabet, or a lot of alphabets, are different. So, but that's... I think and I hope that this has been a real joy for the translators as well, because it's more like translating a poem. You have to find your own entrance into it and your own rhythm. But I'm very happy to hear that the poetry and the musicality and the beauty that I've tried to put into this novel, that it's in the Polish version as well. And I'm sure she's done a wonderful job. We used to keep in touch on email last year.
Okay. Czy mamy jakieś pytania od internautów być może także?
Do we have any questions from the
Tutaj
internet users,
centrum?
from the audience here in the room? Any
Nie mamy pytań.
questions?
So I'm gonna ask you a couple of last questions. So it all started with your son asking you about Herr Kommissar. So were you in touch with your, I mean, you obviously was in touch with your own son while working on that book, but did you keep informing him about what was going on, that you were working to give him that answer to the question why Herr Kommissar had to be killed?
Yes, because every time we went to a family dinner after this, my mother-in-law knew that I started working on this novel. So this was a theme. Every time we met, we would discuss Herr Kommissar. She would send me photos. So this would be part of the big family discussion every time we met for many years. So from this first conversation until the novel was finished was many years, and now my son is he has turned 17, and he read the novel, which must be very strange for him. But yes, it's been a really beautiful process, because one question is, I've known my mother-in-law for more than 20 years, but it was only like 5 or 6 years ago that she's told me about this house, which is incredible. This is a very famous house in Norway, and it is really strange for a Jewish family to move into the headquarters of one of Norway's most known Nazis. Why didn't you tell me about this? So it's like, I think the reason why is that this has been so hard emotionally for a lot of the people in the family, but this novel has been a door opener to her childhood, and to other members in the family as well. And it's been possible to look on memories in a new light, and suddenly all of these stories has come together from different parts of the family, and so it's been really a very, very touching process, and a healing process as well.
So you contributed to that process, basically.
Yes, absolutely, and they are of course extremely proud of the book. It's like every time I post anything on the internet, she's right there and sort of posting about the
like.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's like playing on a playground that's established on a former Jewish cemetery, right? You need to learn that there was this cemetery here. You need to learn, research that place, and then you can maybe restart playing, maybe, or you can decide to leave that place, or you can then come back after. Well, evaluation of what you're feeling about this, and then you can maybe restart playing, but keeping in mind what used to be here. So maybe that's what your book is, also.
Yes. Yeah, and I think I've tried to make this novel as a stumble stone itself. Like writing this novel is a way of keeping his name and some of the names here alive. And now also in Poland, which I am very happy about.
And so when your son asked you that question, why was Herr Kommissar killed? He didn't understand. Do you think he understands that now? Do you understand that now?
Yes, I do think I understand it now, but it's in some ways incomprehensible, I think. To understand it, you have to go into that sense of some people being without worth. Like you have to think of some people like you think of insects, or only then can you can you understand how the Nazis thought? But I think he understands a lot of it now, and of course this part about, are we Jewish, and the question, could we be in danger? That has been quite a tough question, because it's also put pressure on me, and like, could it be dangerous for my kids that I write this novel? It's like my wife found her name on a death list of some Nazis 20 years ago. So it's like, this is not totally, it's a little bit dangerous as well, but important, I think.
Simon, thank you very much for being with us today at the Big Book Festival in Warsaw, Poland.
Thank you. It's been great to attend, and I've never been to Poland, so I would really wish that I could come someday, but not this year.
when the COVID allows us to do so.
Absolutely. Let's hope.
Please do come, and let's meet in person.
That would be great. Thank you for a wonderful conversation.
Thanks a lot. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Dziękuję bardzo. Ja zapomniałem się jeszcze przedstawić na początku. Nazywam się Jan Niebudek i pracuję sobie teraz w Radiu Nowy Świat. Przyszedłem do Państwa dzisiaj, żeby porozmawiać z Simonem.
And I came here to talk, to interview Simon for you. I hope you liked it. Thank you so much.